You're an improv GM. How do you manage to make memorable games with minimal prep?
Some of it is experience, I think. So that's something that can't necessarily be taught. System mastery, whether it be of a single system or of role-playing games in general, is something you get through practice, you know? So get your 10,000 hours in to master it, I suppose. There are little cheats and things you can do. Like in many games, it's coming up with bad guys, monsters, NPCs, and so on that matters so much, and which takes up so much of your prep time, and it's something you typically need to have prepared. But when you realise and understand that the players don't get to see any of that shit, that can be quite freeing. Right, there is no particular need for you to be terribly consistent or to have every detail of an NPC mapped out, unless you're going to publish it, of course. And even then, you can simplify things. So you can reduce them down to their combat stats in most games and what bonuses they get at things they're good at, things they're average at, and things they're bad at. And that's a route I've explicitly taken in some of my more recent game design efforts to try and take some of that strain off the games master. That still allows you to interpret and change things and apply quick templates or tweak the scores as you go along, or create situational benefits or drawbacks that keep things interesting and exciting mechanically. But there's just no need, provided you understand the system to some degree, to worry about all that. If you look at something like Cyberpunk 2020, right, the wind track's the same for most people. For skill levels, you know that you're going to be looking at something between 1 and 20, typically, minus cyberware. So, that gives you a sort of range in which you can gauge how tough an enemy is. Similarly in D&D, any iteration really, provided you've got the hit dice and the attack scores, you can kind of improv everything else to an extent. We don't really need these giant stat blocks that we have from 3rd edition onwards. You can reduce it down to hit points, attack bonus, damage, and any special individual effects that they might have. Forbidden Lands does this quite well with its monsters. They're fairly simple, but they come with a table and a randomization that determines what they do, so you don't need to worry too much about the fine detail. Otherwise, when it comes to plots and so on, again, there's not a huge amount of point having a massively intricate and mapped out plot, because players are going to go off-piste sooner or later, and so even with the most well-prepared adventure, sooner or later you're going to have to improvise. And this is part of the problem I have with published adventures, is they inherently, by the nature of the beast, tend to be quite railroady. So I tend to prefer to have kind of ideas of scenes that can be rearranged into different orders, or players can go to different routes between different ones and find clues leading them to the other ones. And then at the end of that, you get a broader picture of what's going on. Anyone who sneaked a look at my notes for the Grimstreams games will see just how sparse and often hectic my note-taking is, or how something like a bullet point that says virtual reality cultists turns into a whole scene, or whatever else. So system mastery, which takes time and effort, understanding that you can simplify even complex systems down to just the things that you need. And another acquired skill, but also a mindset that things can go in different orders. They can be moved around, and you only need the kind of vaguest idea of how things fit together, and then through play the final form will emerge, and that is also heavily informed by what players think is going on, speculate is going on, or puzzle out for themselves, which may well end up being a better plot than the one you had in mind anyway. So in which case, go with their ideas, and then they'll praise you for being a brilliant games master.